and welcome back, everybody, to episode 8 of On the Brink, sponsored by Auditchain. And with me today is Jason Meyers, our lead architect at Auditchain. Welcome again. And I'm so happy to introduce Nick Spanos, who is no stranger to most of you in the blockchain space, a pioneer, founder of Bitcoin Center New York City, and the world's first ever crypto trading floor. Welcome, Nick.
Welcome. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
On the brink. Thanks for having me on the brink.
And we're on the brink, and we're curious what happened. This is the day after it's been revealed that CZ and Binance might be acquiring FTX. And I'm curious, what led up to this? Maybe you guys can connect the dots for us, because it seems like they've been going back and forth over the last few months. And then there was a Twitter spat a few days ago. And this is after Fortune had an article saying that, SBF was one of the most powerful people in crypto. And here today we find ourselves finding out that FTX is going to be acquired. What do you guys think led up to this?
First, this all reminds me of something, and I want to put things in their proper perspective. If anyone has ever seen the first Ian Fleming James Bond movie called Dr. No, there's a point where Sean Connery and Ursula Andress are looking at the aquarium, right? And Dr. No walks in, and he says, "It's quite a feat of engineering, if I may say so myself. I designed it," right? And then James Bond says, kind of like minnows pretending to be whales, right? And then Dr. No says, I think that depends upon what side of the glass you're on, right? So what happened yesterday looks like Spectre swallowed one of his enemies, who used to be a friend, right? Because I think Binance was the first investor in
Yes.
one of the first investors in FTX, right? And now you had this truth is stranger than fiction outcome yesterday, which is the outcome hasn't come to fruition yet. They haven't acquired it yet. They just announced it, right? So,
but how does FTX find themselves in this position?
Well, when you make your own token, and then you make a market in your own token using Alameda, a separate entity, and then you use it for all sorts of collateralization activities, you extend loans with it, and you are its biggest market maker, well, that's like Bear Stearns making all those mortgage bonds and being the primary market of those bonds. And as they were referred to back then, Goldman Sachs says don't trade with Bear Stearns, and they're clearing out all the bonds that Bear Stearns made off of Goldman's trading desk, and then they tell everybody not to trade with Bear. Well, guess what? You're left with being the only market for your own token. And here it is today at $5. It was $20 yesterday.
And is that as a result, and I want to give you, Nick, an opportunity to share your thoughts. Is that a result of CZ saying they were going to be getting out of their position of FTT? Like, is that what led to the price decline?
On the brink, putting FTX on the brink.
Yes.
Yeah.
Putting Bankman on the brink. I think because FTX and Bankman and these guys came in a little later, and CZ's been here a while, so what he got in for was a lot cheaper exponentially than what these new guys got in for. And when the price dropped, all kinds of things happened, and then CZ was a third owner of the token.
Do you think he should have shared that he was getting out of the position before he did? Because a lot of people have, there's been a lot of chatter about that.
Well, no one really knows the chronology. I'm not sure what really happened chronologically. And there's probably a lot of speculation. If someone could check, then you'd really know. But you know, he bought it, he could sell it. So who knows what other conversations had transpired to put him in that position to do. And this I think the kid overextended himself. I mean, he's very young, so we're going to be hearing from him, of course, with great stuff probably into the future. But you got to live and learn, and sometimes you got to fall down to learn how to get back up.
And what a fall. 18 billion wiped out.
Yeah, they
So-
were valued at 32 billion the last round of funding.
But I understand that Sam Bankman-Fried had political ideologies and was backing politicians whose philosophy was in opposition to what CZ and, in fact, other people in crypto actually believe, including and especially Eric Voorhees, right?
Yeah,
Him and Eric had a debate on bankers.
about a month ago. Yeah.
So, Nick, you know something a little bit more than I do about politics, right? You may have something.
No, I don't know much. Yeah. Well, that's where I came from. I came from the political side. And I think, not all of us, as a matter of fact, in early Bitcoin, most of us were, Ron Paulers, and many of us were staffers. I mean, we actually worked for Dr. Ron Paul, a libertarian, Republican, but libertarian candidate in the Republican Party. And the whole reason for Bitcoin was, we believed, was, a libertarian idealism. We've always pushed for sound money, gold, silver. One of our guys got his $17 million worth of gold. Bernard Van Nuthouse, funny name, but they took his gold. He made the Ron Paul dollar in 2007. And they took all his gold and silver. He had some digital money there also. And as a matter of fact, the first place Bitcoin showed up was at Ron Paul events. We even had, Max Kaiser showed up to my Liberty HQ. I think it was 2011, and was pushing everyone. I mean, they listened to him more than me. But, we believed there was a libertarian continuation of the libertarian revolution that we had started. And the Fed was one of the projects that I was highly involved in, where we would protest all the Federal Reserve buildings. We chased down every senator. Where there was Ron made a bill, audit the Fed. We chased down every senator, and every congressman at first, and we'd videotape them and start yelling at them, asking, I don't want to say, but maybe I sicked like 60,000 kids on congressmen to vote for audit the Federal Reserve bill that Ron put together there. That's another whole long story. But yeah, that's so if this guy is anathema to that movement, I don't want, I'm not happy when anyone falls, but we weren't like West Coast, San Francisco, whatever the heck,
Tech bros.
Silicon Valley.
we were libertarians. We were
Yeah.
all libertarians. And many of us, actually were staffers, Ron Paul staffers.
But my understanding is that this whole impetus was started by the difference in political ideologies between Binance and FTX, right? And then finally, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, CZ just announced we're clearing out our FTT tokens off of our books, right?
Yeah.
Which is likely, after he cleared out most of it, and now they're going to clear out the rest of it, right? The question is, how much did they sell prior to that tweet that said we're clearing the rest of our FTT tokens off our books, right? So the precipitative fall in the FTT token between yesterday and today is probably the rest of the world coming out of it, right? Because I would imagine that CZ had cleared most of it out
beforehand.
before. Yeah.
I didn't want to say anything like that. I mean, I'm not sure. Like I said, if an Auditchain can figure it out, should post the news.
Well, this whole ideal, look, under most financial disclosure frameworks, it is disclosed, all affiliate relationships are disclosed, right? First of all, the problem is nobody in crypto understands financial disclosure. They don't care about financial disclosure. They don't read financial disclosure documents to the very, very limited extent that they exist in crypto. Some of the more prominent projects make financial disclosures, but every single traditional exchange is obligated by law to publish financial statements and financial disclosure documents, which includes, in the footnotes, a list of affiliated relationships and how those affiliated relationships, it is thought, could impact the operations of the company making the financial disclosures. And with FTX's case, you had this exchange, and you have people whose money was custodied on that exchange. Now, unlike traditional exchanges, which do not hold custody of assets, it is literally just an exchange, and then there are clearing banks that clear those trades, but ultimately custody resides in the financial services firms who executed those orders on those exchanges on behalf of the ultimate customers that they bought it on behalf of, right? Which is not the case in crypto, right? Every exchange custodies in a centralized way. So you have exchange and you have custody, right? Those are major, major points of failure. Yet not a single exchange provides an overtly advertised financial disclosure. If you want financial disclosure, I mean, you've got to dig through layers of functionality on the exchange or on their websites, and I don't remember. Coinbase is the only one because they're a publicly traded company under the 34 Act, right, in the United States, which mandates a very, very comprehensive and complex disclosure methodology, right? So, but FTX doesn't have that. There's no accurate legal description of the nature of the relationship between FTX and Alameda Research, which is a market maker, and, you know, Spectre, right? Alameda is like Spectre. And, you know, Sam Bankman-Fried is like, actually, in this case, it's more CZ is Dr. No and Binance is Spectre, right? But
I don't think anyone's watched black and white James Bond movie in our industry, but okay.
What's that?
He says he doesn't think anybody's watched it. You're aging yourself, Jason.
They're all in color.
Sean Connery.
Hey, listen.
Do you guys think, because one of the debates that Sam had with Eric Voorhees was around the power of the OFAC and this notion of banning their power to ban certain countries or dictate how businesses do business with different countries. Do you think this might have had something to do with it? Like, you know, Jason, you alluded to them having different political ideologies. Do you think?
Well, the OFAC list contains nation states, and the example they gave was Iran.
Yeah.
The United States can't do business with Iran. But I think the topic of the conversation was there are these girls who are protesting their own government, and we can't support them by sending them money because that would be a felony. That's illegal. That's doing business with Iran, right? So the citizens of Iran are covered under those OFAC laws, right?
Yeah.
So, and I know Eric was explaining how the nature of what is and what is not unreasonable, right? Like you should be able to contribute to a girl who's protesting against her government or a guy who's protesting against their government without violating the law. It's one thing to take them off the SWIFT. It's one thing to impose economic sanctions on a country. It's another to deal directly outside of the context of sanctions with a citizen of that country for the purposes of, supporting their cause, right? We believe in freedom. She believes in freedom.
Yeah. But do
You know,
you think that what Sam was uh, lobbying for may have impacted Binance's business? In like, we're in an environment where Chinese companies are being, or there's in other industries, there's this gray area of whether you can and can't do business with um, China, and maybe that's going to change over time. I don't know. Is that too much of a stretch? Do you think that there was something there in terms of what Sam was lobbying for that might have impacted Binance's business longer term, should
so
Sam have been successful?
Sam was lobbying for standards. He wasn't lobbying to reinforce existing regulations,
Okay.
except to a limited extent that those regulations served the standards that he was lobbying for, right? And then Eric, actually, during that debate, there were a lot more agreements than there were disagreements.
True.
But if you take Eric out of the picture, what Sam was advocating for in terms of his political ideologies, who he was backing, how much money he was putting into this election, midterm election, clearly it was thought that that would go against the interests of Binance. And, the question arose, does Sam Bankman-Fried speak for the whole crypto community? Right? Nick can probably tell you, probably not, right? He certainly
I
didn't
don't
speak
think.
for Binance. What
Nick,
do you think?
what's your view of, the impact
Well, I
of
think. Well, of course, I think the kid screwed up. Sometimes the market's hot, you think you're a genius, and then the market goes down. And, some people still think they're geniuses, and then they're expressing their opinions, and their opinions have nothing to do with the community. And then, so Eric has been around a long time, and I know him very well. He's a friend of mine, and he's a well-spoken libertarian, and he explains, what the foundation of censorship-resistant money. I mean, the whole foundation of why we're here. Uh, Freed wants to push OFAC nodes or whatever the heck he was talking about. OFAC on everybody. I mean, if that happens, that can happen across time. But if powerful members of the community are folding, not only folding, but rolling out the red carpet for regulation that's so antiquated with the legacy financial system, that they're the ones that, you can't be ushering in, the surveillance money on crypto right now. Don't be ushering that in. I mean, the CBDCs are going to do that just fine. But if you're also the one ushering in surveillance money narrative, you're going to get screwed.
With Arthur
That's your
Hayes is
point.
another
Yeah.
one. Arthur Hayes is another one. He wrote a really long blog that illustrates the architecture or potential architecture, it is thought, and not just by him, but by a lot of us, about how it's a control mechanism, right? What
Yeah.
if there's expiration dates on a CBDC, right? You've got to spend a certain portion of your paycheck within a certain period of time. You can't spend it outside of a geofenced area, right? You can't invest the rest of your money in certain assets, right? Because there's a fence around that. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That's that's 100
You
squared.
can't buy a train ticket. What did you
Huh?
say?
That's
That's
100
what?
squared of that's 100 squared of George Orwell's ideas that he
Yeah,
tried to.
I was thinking for sure. I was thinking that, you can't buy a ticket to Tiananmen Square on the train.
Right.
Everyone's protesting. A year ago, the tank man stood up in front of those tanks and stuff. And they say that's Bitcoin standing in front of the legacy financial system. But otherwise, that square would be empty because you couldn't buy a train ticket. You'd have to walk.
Or worse,
But it just turned.
worse, a Democrat couldn't change his mind and buy a ticket to a Republican National Convention, and vice versa.
So speaking of getting screwed, like what do you think is going to happen with these companies that had gone to FTX to get bailed out? In all of the articles, the way the media characterize what CZ is doing now is that he's going to do his due diligence, that this LOI is not in stone. What if he decides it's too much of a stink bomb and he doesn't want to acquire it? What is the potential impact? Because there've been some big folks like BlockFi that had gone to FTX and gotten a bailout. Like what is the domino effect of a potential, like let's say CZ says, I'm not doing the deal.
Let's put things in their proper perspective again, because I'm going to link it to the Eric Voorhees, Sam Bankman-Fried debate.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
base layer needs to be left alone. The base layer is fine. Everything's working perfectly on the base layer of the Bitcoin and Ethereum blockchains, and for the most part, other chains. I won't mention any names.
Correct.
Some chains may be questionable because the price of one chain that Sam Bankman-Fried had a vested interest in has gone down significantly in the last 36 hours. But the point is that you have the second and third layers that are just as intertwined and interlocked as the legacy financial system is back in 2008 and as it is now, right? Because Sam Bankman-Fried made a loan to BlockFi. He also made a loan, I believe, to 3 Hours Capital. The question is, what did he loan them? Did he loan them cash? Did he loan them Bitcoin? Or did he loan them
FTT.
the FTT token, right?
Oh,
So the question is, how many critical bailouts occurred using either a derivative of or the spot FTT token? So if CZ steps away, it's almost like, yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried became the JP Morgan and bailed out crypto during the Celsius up until now, right? But as it turns out, CZ may, if crypto's going to live, there needs to be an examination of the nature of the trace of recourse of all of these liabilities, like what they've been doing on the steps of the Southern District for the last 14 years, which finally ended, to figure it out with Lehman Brothers, right?
yeah.
So at the base layer, everything's perfect. Caitlin Long talks about how Bitcoin is an antithesis to leverage, right? Leverage is a disease. Sam Bankman-Fried doesn't think that. Leverage is used to stimulate trading. There's more trading, more volatility with leverage. But everything, the weather's beautiful at the base layer. Everything's working beautifully. Right, Nick?
Oh, with us, yeah, for sure.
So those of us at the base layer are all fine. The point is,
Nick, do you think that Sam should have been providing these bailouts? And do you think they've been provided with FTT? Like what collateralized with FTT? What did you think of him bailing out?
Apparently, in hindsight, he probably shouldn't have, of course, because look what's going on here. I think his appetite was bigger than his stomach. So You know, now he has to eat a different type of food. So I think, you know,
One way,
it's a young industry wagging the dog. So we're, people are learning. They're learning. They're going to learn, and everyone's learning, and we're learning right now today. And in the middle of crypto winter, and some people haven't been through that before, and they don't know what that means. Crypto winter means, you pull your hair out, you run around, and there's no volume, prices are crashing, blah blah blah. I don't know if we're in the middle. Apparently, we're at the end of it. I hope, but like I said, when the market's hot, everyone's a genius, and when it's not, then you realize that it was the market. So, we're very lucky to be in this spot. This incredible invention has the ability to free us, the open, permissionless blockchain, and that doesn't say the blockchain with the OFAC node, or your node has to run an OFAC list, that's not in there. It's got to be open, permissionless, borderless blockchain to free us.
if I may, yes, I agree with that. And one of the things Eric was saying was we should all keep a list of addresses that are bad actors, right? And each project or exchange or what have you should be able to choose whether or not to interact with those addresses. We should out bad actors because bad actors can kill our space. They can kill this thing that was created, right? That we've all been working so hard to build. But I think to answer your question, Yoli, look, FTX was an exchange. It had this token. So if you use the token, you can get cheaper discounts on commissions, right? And all that stuff. Not a new invention. A lot of exchanges have their own token. But what Sam, I think, I don't know, was doing is another way to cement adoption of that token would have been to bail out other projects or invest in other projects using that token, because now they would have an incentive to keep the price of that token stable, or relatively speaking, which then decentralizes the stability of a token. And I'm not saying whatsoever that it's a stable token or it was his attempt at stabilizing the token, but everybody has, when you make those allocations during those bailouts and those investments using that token, those projects now have an incentive to not let that token fall.
Yeah.
If it falls, it could have systemic impacts throughout the crypto community. Now, what does that mean? It means that they will be forced to sell other assets like Bitcoin or Ethereum, which could further depress the price of Bitcoin or Ethereum. But I want to make it very clear, the base layers are fine, but are antithetical to leverage. Otherwise, you're acting just like the legacy financial system.
And it sounds like, the promise of blockchain technology has been, at least one of the promises has been this level of transparency. How is it that you can have in 1 month an organization that was, considered like super powerful, one of the top, go from that to being in insolvency? Like, what is going wrong in terms of the level of transparency?
We're talking about Lehman Brothers?
No, I'm talking about FTX. Like,
it's the same thing. It's the same thing. The difference between Lehman Brothers and FTX.
But Lehman Brothers didn't have blockchain.
No.
So why aren't we seeing why is the promise of transparency and the risks? Because I'm just talking from a layman's perspective, just looking at, like, why is it that we're not, the risks aren't exposed? You know, how is it that one company can appear to be so solid 1 minute and then the next minute? In the case of Lehman, we didn't have the technology, but we have the technology now. So what is not happening? Is
Well,
it
first of
we need
all,
Auditchain?
the bulk, the bulk. First of all, there's no disclosure of affiliated relationships, the nature of those relationships,
Yeah.
and the risk that those relationships could have on the operations that are making the financial disclosures.
Yeah.
Right?
When do we have problems? When do investors get hurt? It's when we have a lack of disclosure, opacity, if you wish, a lack of disclosure, as particularly when you're using other people's money on behalf of an intermediary or a platform or the like. And that's why Congress laid out in the various foundational laws a lot about disclosure in the 33 and 34 Act, and a lot about what happens when you take other people's money and you manage it. That's the Investment Company Act and the like. And so
FTX, nobody has that in the crypto space. That is a way of life under legacy regulations. And you know, I don't want to, I really fucking hate to say this, but unfortunately, Gary Gensler, as much as he shakes his finger, is going to be proven right by the very people who are opposing what he stands for.
How do you feel about that, Nick? So Jason just said Gary Gensler might be proven right. How do you feel about that?
Well, hold on. No. Let's say the whole thing. He might be, unfortunately, he might be proven right by the very actors that oppose what he stands for because of the way they're behaving.
What do you think about that?
Well, you know, blockchain does afford a lot of transparency that we're not utilizing, and especially FTX is not utilizing it because they have they're a centralized organization, and that's the issue. So, you know, as this industry evolves and people learn from their mistakes, I don't know how many mistakes people are going to learn from with centralized exchanges, but you know, we never liked them. You have to be decentralized, transparent, and all that stuff, and no one knows what the heck's happening over there. It's a company. It's not a blockchain, really. I mean, it's not a Bitcoin. You know, it's a company. You have Bitcoin, and the rest of them, you know, pretty much are run by humans.
You know, I had a fight with a regulator over an accounting, and that's how I got into crypto. And I landed.
Wait. That's how you got into crypto?
You let me finish, right? I landed in Nick's office because I rented an apartment in Soho from his agency, and I met him on the street, and we had a long conversation. And my crypto life was born in his office, right? And I was raised at BitDevs. I was born in Nick's office and raised at BitDevs. So I had a good upbringing. I had a very, very good upbringing, right? So, and Nick would probably recall the time that I flipped out, and it hit me all at once because of what I had been through before: accounting, audit, financial reporting, period, bar none. And this was at a time where people were doing silly stuff still at that time, right? And I saw the ability to create the one immutable, universal, undisputable accounting truth. So this way, if you were telling the truth and you were an entity, you couldn't be persecuted or impeached by regulators like I was, right? Or if you're an investor, you can see a company's expression and articulation of accounting truth through financial disclosure. If you were an auditor, you can reverse engineer that articulation and expression of financial disclosure and attest with comfort and conviction that it is a fair presentation of financial state, right? So that's what I saw. And that is a $600 billion business today. It'll be an $800 billion business by 2027. When you combine that with business intelligence, which is the ability for an investor to perform analysis on a centralized entity or a decentralized network, that's business intelligence. That's $400 billion in 2027. So the total addressable market is $1.1 trillion. And these services are indispensable in the world. Regulation is not going away. Unless we all get together and build a bigger standing army, they will not be toppled. There will have to be some sort of a compromise, right? But the bigger these centralized companies get that are building on blockchain, the more necessary it becomes for them to articulate accurate financial disclosure, and that includes risk factors and the true nature of affiliated relationships. Because without that, you got FTXs that are going to happen every single day or every week or every month, right? This way I can make an informed decision of whether or not I want to custody my money on FTX. What kind of relationship with Alameda is it? What is the concentrated risk behind this FTX token? What transactions with that FTX token took place between FTX and Alameda? What transactions that could affect FTX did Alameda make with other projects that could cause systemic risk? This stuff is a part of life in the legacy financial system. I'm not saying it's perfect. It certainly needs substantial improvement, but it's completely a barren desert in crypto. I don't mean to speak on behalf of Gary Gensler. I'm not speaking on behalf of Gary Gensler. I'm not advocating Gary Gensler. But the problem is that these actors in crypto are going to end up proving that he's right. And the question is, what's he going to do in response to this FTX?
But
what are they doing now?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like, Nick, you were implying that, if you're a centralized company who's building on the blockchain, there's some things that you should enable or leverage that are inherent in the way blockchain technology works that they aren't doing today. Or do you think that you can't be a centralized company and live up to the spirit of what blockchain was originally intended to?
Well, if you're a blockchain company
being the operative word.
Yeah.
Then it's up to the individual. It's not up to me. What do I believe? I believe that we should use the technology to decentralize and get to where we're supposed to be after all these millennia of centralization. I'd like to decentralize. But I think I remember pounding into Jason's head the blockchain. Not pounding, but
Pounding.
He's a very
No, it was pounding.
Oh, you have 30 years of experience on Wall Street?
Yeah, I had to decouple that.
That's going to be hard.
I had to decouple that. It was a Control-Alt-Delete. It was a rebirth for me.
Over and over. I saw him. I got to tell you. But I happened to stop by. I had a bunch of real estate offices. I think I still have some. And I stopped by and I saw Jason across the street, and I said, "You know what? That's I was speaking to the person that was helping him that worked for me. He goes, "Oh, that's a Wall Street guy." I go, "That's a Wall Street guy?" I go, "No, he looks a little scrappy. I might need to borrow that guy." So I talked to him a little. I go, "Yeah, this guy's a scrapper." And that's what that's what blockchain needs. That's what I did. I collected scrappers. I collected fighters. I mean, you can't fight a revolution with a bunch of limp biscuits. So I found this character over here, and I pounded it into his head to see what came out. And Auditchain came out, and I said, "Oh, so we're going to hold these big companies report the big four. I think it was five back then. No, it was four back then also, right?
Okay.
The
Yeah.
accounting agencies who are leading people to believe all these things. I mean, I remember Arthur Anderson went away with Enron. They led a lot of people to believe that all that was whatever. So he's gonna, oracleize these reportings, and I said that's a hell of an idea. So I'm very happy, convincing
The world needs more Auditchain.
another scrapper into the blockchain world. And yeah, I mean, people like, oh, blockchain, what do you mean audit? He's not always auditing the public companies or the ones with a blockchain, they need to be audited. All that stuff is garbage down there. I found out when I went to Wall Street to interact with those people, I couldn't believe what they were. I had a different opinion of what they were until I interacted with them, So the people downtown, I mean, I don't want to say it's a den of thieves. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that it's a den of thieves down there.
They call themselves barbarians at the gate, right? There's many books about it. So,
ridiculous. So I'm
but
glad that somehow they'll be held to account on the blockchain.
Nick, I want to ask you something, right? I want to take you back to the Genesis block of the Bitcoin blockchain, right? You probably
You want to
have
take me back on the brink?
on the
On
brink. That's correct.
2009.
On the brink. So, as you know, in the Coinbase, there is the inscription, which refers to an article published on the same day, January 3rd, 2009. That's our New Year's Day. Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. When you saw that for the first time in the Genesis block, within that context, what was your thoughts?
I didn't live on Wall Street for 30 years like you. So for you, it meant a lot more. So what did it mean for you?
Well, I know what it meant for Satoshi. It was that was the beginning of the silent protest against the centralized fractional reserve banking system and all that it has failed society, right?
Well, yeah.
The question is, why was the chancellor on the brink of a second bailout for banks? Most people in crypto stop at the banks, right? But if you give the keys to the candy store to a bunch of children, what are they going to do? What are they going to do?
Yeah, they're going to get zits. They're going to
They're
get
going
fat.
to
They're going to eat
they're going
bounce
to eat
off
all
the
the candy,
walls. Yeah.
right? You need all the candy. But if I told you that there were 4 adults in that room that were supposed to say something when they saw something, now how do you feel?
Well, yeah, that's all systemic, the systemic issues that they're just saying whatever the heck they want, pretty much,
Well,
And then people buy the stock, and then banks give loans because of the audited financials, and people buy the stock, and then the whole thing's someone flushes a toilet, and that's what happened.
well, if I told you that it started with Barney Frank and ended with Barney Frank, would that shock you?
Absolutely not.
Okay. So Barney Frank convinced Bill Clinton to sign a bill into law that exempted big banks from the SEC's net capital rule if they were of a certain size. The SEC's net capital rule governs how much net capital you should have. There are haircuts that are required to be taken on certain assets. The bigger, more liquid the asset, the less of the haircut. The more illiquid and smaller the asset, the more of a haircut, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are very, very sound capital controls under any environment, right? But when Barney Frank convinced Bill Clinton to sign that bill into law that exempted them from net capital requirements, it then allowed companies like Bear Stearns to lever 20, 30, 50 to 1, whereas the net capital rule limits the aggregate indebtedness to 15 to 1, 1,500% of your capital, right? Now you're making esoteric securities in which you are the primary market maker for. And you're counting that as your capital, right? Until one day, Ace Greenberg gets on TV, or what was it, Warren Spector, and he says, we don't have a capital problem, which at that specific point in time was true. But the next day, when Goldman Sachs told all their traders not to execute trades where the counterparty 2 steps removed was Bear Stearns, well, then the value of that inventory held on their books began to sink. And within a couple of, basis points,
They were in problem. They were having a liquidity issue. Isn't this
no, it wasn't a liquidity. No. That wasn't a liquidity problem. That was a solvency problem.
But I'm trying to align it to what's happened now with FTX.
It's the same thing. They make FTX, I'm sorry, I'm going to speak in Gary Gensler's words. FTX created a security. Alameda was the primary market maker for that security. Didn't tell anybody, didn't disclose it, and then Alameda cuts deals with all these other projects to collateralize and invest with that FTX token. And the exchange holds an inventory of that FTX token. And they're custodying people's money. And internally, they're calculating a 1-to-1 basis with the compilation and the assumption that FTX token is part of the ability to make whole all of that money held in custody by FTX for the benefit of all those customers. Crazy. That not only requires financial disclosure, it requires a very, very acute detail of the nature of all of the risks associated with those affiliated transactions and affiliated relationships. If I'm going to put money and open an account with FTX, I want to know that stuff. Don't you, Nick? Forget about crypto, blockchain, or otherwise.
If I own shares of FTX.
No, if you want to deposit money with FTX and use that as a custodian.
In their centralized exchange?
Yes. Don't you want to know all this?
I don't know how to put money in a centralized exchange. I don't know how to do that.
Okay, but the rest of the world is just understanding crypto, right? 1% of the world's population is familiar with crypto, right? But if I'm a hedge fund, I'm an institution, I manage $1 billion, and I'm going to deposit money with BNY Mellon, I'm obligated to read their financial statements and any affiliate relationships that may affect the operations of BNY Mellon as my custodian, because my client's money, in which I am acting as a fiduciary, is being custodied by a third party, right? And there are all sorts of audit standards, SOC, System and Organizational Control audits, ISAE 3402 type audits that affect financial reporting controls over a service organization. I manage $1 billion. BNY Mellon is a service provider. They are providing custody services. For whose money? Not my money, my client's money. They allocated their money under my fiduciary control and oversight. I have an obligation to do due diligence on the service providers that play a role in providing the services that allow me to manage money for all of my investors. Did Sam Bankman-Fried do that? No, he did not. Do any exchange do that in crypto? It is highly doubtful.
But they're all, these ones are centralized. Maybe we close off this way, Nick. I would love to hear from you. You are a pioneer in the space. You've seen it all. How would you like to see things evolve? What's your ideal state in terms of either Bitcoin adoption, blockchain adoption, centralization versus decentralization? Like we're at this spot now. What would you like to see happen?
What would the dream be?
Dream state for you? Like you're
What's the dream?
libertarian. Like what's the dream state for you?
I bought into the dream, Nick, so just state it.
Well, I could see a world where the individual actually has custody of their wealth and their store of value across time. Right now, when you deposit money into a bank, it's not really your money because money has a certain property. It belongs to the bearer. So when you send it to the bank, it's the bank's money. They might give it back to you. They might give it to your third ex-wife or something. You never know what could happen. So, with the Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, I think this is the first time in creation that we're actually able to take custody of our wealth, our stored work. And that's what money is. You dig a ditch, get paid, and you try to hold on to some of that money into the future. But if it's dollars, it gets inflated and inflated and inflated, and you can't buy anything later. So something that's limited is good, like Bitcoin. And I believe that countries, one by one, that don't have such a huge stake or any stake in the legacy financial system adopt. And we see that all the time. And I've been talking to many. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging or whatever. I'm not bragging. I've been running around most of my career speaking to world leaders. I was in that business, meaning I had a business where I advanced VIPs. I had many clients, so I know how to get in touch with world leaders. And I've been pitching Bitcoin and explaining them. Many of them maybe I shouldn't have, but many that I did to do things are looking up. So I believe that these countries that do not have a stake in the legacy financial system, it's very easy for them to go across into the crypto world, and it's happening every day. I mean, they're going to leapfrog. Like some countries don't have the last mile copper, and but they adopted cell phones really quickly. So it's happening. It's happening, and I'm very happy and humbled that I'm part of this effort, and we've done a lot. We've done a lot. I mean, it's only been 13 years. We've done a lot. It's a miracle. So
And more
I
to
believe
come, right?
that what's going to happen in the future. What could happen? Two things can happen. People can get pitched by those pyramid scams that don't know what Bitcoin is or crypto is, and then they get ripped off, and then they never come back to crypto. And that's pretty much would save, the state from going out of business in the printing business. Going out of the printing business is that if we as a community don't help enforce the narrative of the not your keys, not your money, and no one has to do anything with your crypto except for you. If we go and send it to centralized exchanges or even worse, then we're going to be losing people from the demographics of people owning and loving and embracing crypto. So around the world, People need crypto much more than they need it in the States. And I think it's our job to help facilitate that. And if we don't do that, we're going to be in big trouble. So that's the one scenario, is that we help with that, and then it gets adopted even more. And then, decentralized autonomous organizations keep, sprout up. I know the regulators are trying to destroy anything and everything that we're doing. And we have to support candidates. Congressman Budd is Senator Budd today in North Carolina. So that's pretty good. I mean, he spearheaded a bunch of crypto stuff for us in the past. But I don't know what the future holds. I hope, if we don't free ourselves with the permissionless open blockchain, they're going to imprison us with the centralized data silos that they're going to be calling blockchain, and the centralized companies and the regulations that they build to keep themselves on top. And we'll be imprisoned, enslaved, and encumbered by those into the future. Not just us, but our children and our children's children, our brothers and sisters' children, and all the way down to the end of time. So we have this one little opportunity right now. I hope we can reach out to scrappers like Mr. Meyers here and join the revolution. It's a peaceful revolution, and we're doing okay. So come on board and change the world, or stay on your couch. I don't know. Do whatever you want to do.
Well, we want to join the revolution. Thank you so much, Nick. That's Nick Spanos, everybody, a pioneer in the space. And I couldn't have said it better. Join the revolution. So this is one day after the big midterm elections, and I'd love to get quick thoughts from either of you. Has it been a bloodbath? If so, where? What has benefited crypto, if anything?
Well, I think that the red wave did not really happen because the Roe v. Wade, I think stole the red wave. I remember, I think Obama lost 30 congressmen, something like that, and 6 senators in his midterm elections. And I think that, there was a big voter registration, Gen Z voter registration wave that happened. And I think they all came out to vote against, what happened with Roe v. Wade, going to the states. I mean, it was interpreted the way they wanted to interpret it, of course, and it was used to motivate their voters, because I don't think they would have been motivated any other way. They needed something really big, and that was pretty big. And I think crypto is going to suffer because of a Roe v. Wade.
Were there some senators, or what were you hoping to see happen that would have benefited crypto? If you could get specific to certain people running.
It's my opinion that I think we did better the last administration with the crypto. I believe that's true. And so, that's my perspective. I don't know, if you ask Sam Bankman, he'd probably give you another perspective. But the reality is crypto's getting hit harder under this administration, and they should have lost more seats. I mean, we don't. They have the Congress, they have the House and the Senate, and the executive branch, so they can push through whatever they want. So this country was designed where, there's blowback from too much power being in one group, and then everyone comes out and votes against them, and then the power gets distributed more equally, and that's happened most midterms. Even Clinton's midterm, and Bush's midterm, but this time, I think Roe v. Wade helped for that not to happen against Democratic candidates. So I'm not sure what the numbers are, but absolute power corrupts absolutely.
So you don't think, I mean, how did Trump candidates go? Because I think there's some candidates that were sort of characterized as sort of pro-Trump and I'm just playing the devil's advocate here. So
Hold on
pro-Trump,
one second. They were being labeled as
yes,
MAGA purists by the Democrats.
How did those folks do?
Listen, they're going to want to say that, oh, if you're associated with Trump, that's who lost the midterms. They're going to want to say that, and they're going to build up DeSantis.
Yeah.
And
it's
try to
already
destroy
happened.
Trump, because both sides are trying to destroy Trump. He didn't have any friends on the Hill. I think in the words of Mike Meyers, it's like sending a rabid pit bull to Washington. And I've been in Washington for a long time. They deserved to get treated that way. I believe after the fact, not before. I mean, I wasn't really a fan, but so they're gonna, the narrative's gonna be, oh, Trump lost it, but Roe v. Wade lost it for what would have been a red wave. It would have been, but Roe v. I mean, we'll probably. I don't have a lot of the numbers, but if I look at the voter turnout, you'll see that it's probably pretty big voter turnout for a midterm election. Off years stuff.
Makes you wonder. I'm Canadian, so I sort of sit back and just observe.
You're locked in your house, right? You're locked in your house over there.
I'm in Mexico. Yet? I'm in Mexico, so
you escaped.
Yes,
I escaped. Oh, good. But escaped from Canada.
I 100% escaped. I couldn't have handled the last 3 years like that. The GOP should have reacted to Roe v. Wade differently, don't you think? And I think the fact that they didn't, maybe that was strategic. I don't know. Or was it just good luck on the Democrats' part?
Oh, the whole thing was probably set up. Probably. I mean, how did I don't know how you do that and not expect the blowback that has occurred. I mean, I said that right away. I said it right away. I saw Roe v. Wade. Oh, they're gonna lose the midterm. I thought they might even. I thought they were gonna lose the midterm, which probably is what should have happened. But they might take the House. I don't know about the Senate. You got these guys, and well, I'm glad that Congressman Bud became Senator Bud. He's one of ours, Bitcoin guy, and.
What are your thoughts, Jason? Do you think what's your reaction to the election?
I'm allergic to elections. I'm allergic to politics. Yeah. When you look at the way corporate America purchases and installs all those politicians, it kind of makes you wonder, does your vote even count? I mean, I know it counts, but I don't like politics.
Well, nobody likes it, Jason. It's an apparatus that folks have to navigate, right? Look, and it sounds like Sam Bankman-Fried was trying to and fell flat.
When our token has a $20-30 billion market cap, we'll purchase and install politicians, point people at the FASB and at the SEC to do our bidding for us, right?
Is that working for Ripple? No.
I'm not a politician. We'll see. Yeah. I mean, we'll see, right? The fact is, it's funny you say that, because Ripple can mint and sell more Ripple to pay for legal fees than the SEC can convince the Appropriations Committee to allocate to its budget.
True.
So,
And it sounds like Coinbase is joining Ripple in this particular case. I'm not sure if I'm characterizing it correctly, but it sounded like they had applied to join the case.
There's a lot of amicus briefs being filed, friends of the court briefs being filed in favor of Ripple and opposed to the SEC, right? But doing that involves lawyers drafting memorandums of law that cite precedent and existing laws that craft and couch the arguments in favor, right?
Yeah.
Or opposed. So,
well, interesting times, gentlemen. But thank you for.
This Dr. Oz lost.
yeah.
Was he a crypto friend?
No, I don't know. I don't think so. I met him one time with Rand backstage. Rand Paul, he's a friend of mine, and we've when he came to New York.
So
Wisconsin is pretty close there.
What about Georgia?
Well, there's a runoff for sure because no one's reaching 50%, so there's a runoff. I think
whoever thought Herschel Walker,
another guy there, I think Warnick is at 49 point something, 0.2, and Walker's at 48.7, something like that, like very close number. But if no one reached 50, they got to have a runoff. So that's going to be the race where all the money is going to pour into there.
Yeah.
So if someone had tokens in media tokens, that would have been a good buy to buy a good purchase to get a bunch of political ad tokens.
So Nick, are you with a straight face in support of Herschel Walker? Sorry, I showed my bias there, didn't I?
I just need I like the government when it can't do anything. So
Gridlock.
I like gridlock.
I see. So it's like whoever we're gonna need to get that to happen. Got it.
Yeah, I don't like any of these guys.
I mean, it's fascinating from my standpoint. Okay.
Gridlock. We want to gridlock it.
Got it.
That's what we want to jam up. We don't want things to pass, like shit through a goose where anyone comes up with some stupid idea and it becomes a law in a few days. That's ridiculous. That's not how the United States was created or why it was created. It was created because they understood that people are corruptible and absolute power, of course, corrupts absolutely. And we're in a big problem. We got a big problem.
Well, 535 members of Congress are corruptible. That's why when corporations see an opportunity, with the bill on its way to the floor of the House or the Senate, they hire a law firm to write language. They call the congressman that sponsored the bill, and they slip that language in there. It's not like Saturday morning.
Yeah.
We learned on Saturday morning, it's just a bill on the bill.
I'm just a bill. Yeah, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Oh.
They lied to us when we were kids.
He's sitting there on the step outside. He was waiting by the White House, right? In line by the White House. Well, I waited online with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. But I know I want to be a law. Well, I hope and pray that I will. But today, I am still just a bill.
On that note, I've got nothing to top that. With that, thank you, Jason, for joining episode 8. And thank you again, Nick Spanos, on behalf of Auditchain. We really appreciate you joining the show on the brink. Until then, we'll see you guys next time. And we'd love to hear what you thought of this episode. So comment, If you're watching us on YouTube and if you're listening to us on audio, I will see you for episode 9. Tune in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.